Members of the 31st Senate, I hereby declare open this, our final meeting. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gather and pay my respects to the elders past and present. On behalf of the Senate, I acknowledge and warmly welcome to our meeting our distinguished guests. Her Excellency Dr Penelope Wensley AO, Governor of Queensland, who is also attending her first Senate meeting in her official capacity as visitor to this university. And special welcome to Mr Stuart McCosker. The Honourable Anna Bligh, MP, Premier of Queensland, Mr René Fritschke, Chancellor of the Central Queensland University, and Mrs Noeline Fritschke, the Honourable Sir Lou Edwards, AC and Lady Edwards, Professor John Hay, AC, and Mrs Barbara Hay, Professor Brian Wilson, AO, former senators, incoming senators, members of staff, ladies and gentlemen. I should mention that I did receive a very gracious letter from Sir Salman Khan regretting that he was unable to be present, so I would ask that the minutes record his apology. On the 10th December 1859, Queensland became a self-governing community, and on the 10th December 1909, the 50th anniversary of the event was celebrated by the inauguration of the University of Queensland. The ceremony involved the assent to the University of Queensland Bill by the Governor of Queensland, Sir William McGregor, and the dedication of Government House to its new purpose of providing a home for the Centre of Learning. As Professor Malcolm Thomas records, the event brought to an end a 40-year debate in which Queensland's need for a university had been strenuously asserted and just as strenuously denied. But be that as it may, it was on all accounts a grand occasion, conducted in the afternoon at Government House, which presumably was in the heat of the afternoon on a day just like today. The official record states that, and I quote, "To the ceremony were bidden all who could lend to it distinction and interest. It was no mere official or exclusive gathering, but one which represented in full measure the democratic character of the Queensland people. Those in high places were there, those who in university life had won honour, those who had laboured to lay the foundations of the educational system of which this was the culmination, the consular representatives, the people for whose children this was to be, in a real and practical sense, the great training school and character-building institution, the children from whose ranks were to be drawn the earliest students. There were 700 invited guests, and again quoting from the official record, many wearing their university costumes, which vied in colour and variety with the dresses of the ladies. Beyond the official enclosure were the school children, 250 boys and 550 girls and 200 state school cadets. Beyond their lines were gathered the members of the general public, and the finishing touch was the military element, drawn from the 9th Australian Infantry Regiment, lined up alongside the whole front of Government House. This tableau is captured for posterity in the friezes on the tower of the Forgan Smith building. There were, of course, speeches, and it must be said that our forefathers not only took themselves very seriously, but possessed considerable oratorical flair. The gathering heard from the Premier, the Governor, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, and representatives from the universities of Sydney and Adelaide. They make fascinating reading, but in the time available this evening, it's not possible to convey fully their passion and enthusiasm for the establishment of the university and all that it stood for, and their hopes and aspirations for its future. But if you would indulge me, if I quote just one passage from the address by the Premier, the Honourable William Kidston. There is this difference between the youngest university in the Empire and the oldest. Oxford was established by a king. The University of Queensland is established by the people. Queensland is democratic not only in her political institutions, she is democratic in her heart and sentiment. And the desire of our people for a university is simply the desire that Queensland may be an educated democracy, the safest, the strongest and the happiest community in which men can live. I would have the Senate always remember that it was the desire of our people that inspired the crowning of our educational system by the establishment of a university. That in very truth, the Queensland University is of the people, and I trust that the Senate will never forget that it should be for the people. It is not all of us who can go to a university or directly share in its advantages, yet the whole community should, and I hope will, receive a general benefit. To our Premier of today, may I say that successive Senates of the University of Queensland have heard and adhered to this message, and that I believe that our university has fulfilled, does fulfil, and will continue to fulfil that serious responsibility. The inauguration was not only grand, it was also important for both the State of Queensland and for its university. It is therefore appropriate that we should recognise that occasion by the final meeting of the 31st Senate within this historic chamber, within the domain in which is situated Old Government House, now so magnificently restored under the leadership of Professor Peter Coldrake and his university. And in so doing, we're honoured by the presence of our Governor and of our Premier and their willingness to address us as did their predecessors 100 years ago. We're also honoured to welcome many friends and supporters of the university, whose presence augments the distinction of this Senate meeting. I now invite Professor Paul Greenfield, the university's Vice-Chancellor and President, to address you. Thank you.